Good evening, everybody. It's 6 o'clock. I'd like to call this meeting to order. We'll start with an invocation led by Councilmember Fugit, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilmember Thomas. Please rise as you're able.
Bow our heads. Lord, may we appreciate and use each day that comes to us. We pray for strength and guidance for each day as it comes, for each day's duties, for each day's problems. May we be challenged to give our best always, and please be with us as we do the work of our city tonight. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson, would you please call the roll?
Councilwoman Fugit.
Here.
Councilwoman Helsley. Councilwoman McKenzie.
Here.
Councilwoman Parker. Here. Councilwoman Ryder. Here. Councilman Roberto.
Here.
Councilwoman Singh. Vice Mayor Smith.
Here.
And Councilman Thomas. All members present, Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Item number 4, is there a motion on the minutes from our last meeting?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Are there any items to be withdrawn tonight? Are there any items to be postponed? Vice Mayor Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to postpone one more time item 11C. These are the easements along Waterfront Drive. I believe within the next couple weeks we'll have this fully resolved. So with that, I'll make a motion to postpone for 4 weeks.
Okay, motion has been made to postpone for 4 weeks, item 11C. It's been made and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Councilmember Parker?
I have a question. Do we have a limit on the number of times that we can postpone something? Nope, we can postpone it, okay.
Okay.
If there is, we're close.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, Ms. Parker? Okay. Seeing no other questions, all those in favor of this postponement, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion to postpone carries. Any other items to be postponed? Are there any items requested to be added? Are there consent agenda items? Okay. All right. Now it's time for my mayor's report. I want to start by thanking council for the continued discussion of and support of moving forward on an alternative response in our community. As you know, last week, both the city and the county initiated the formation of a task force under the leadership of the United Way, a third-party convener. I want to thank all of council, and in particular Vice Mayor Smith, for your work on this collaborative effort. And of course, thank you to Matt Ryerson and the team at United Way for agreeing to study and evaluate the possibility of an alternative response program in our community. I look forward to their findings and the next steps in this process. Next, I wanted to remind council members that this Thursday we will help celebrate the Knoxville residents who really make things happen at our annual Neighborhood Awards Dinner. We will recognize and honor those who go above and beyond to help our community and highlight a few impactful events as well. So council, you should have received an invitation to this dinner, and I hope some of you, or I hope all of you are able to come, but please let Debbie Sharp know. I will be there and look forward to it. And just yesterday, we celebrated the city's newest KPD officers. 19 men and women graduated from the police academy last night. Many of you were able to attend, so thank you for coming to that special occasion. Your support means a lot, and it means a lot to the graduates and the academy instructors, to Chief Noel and the officers as well. So appreciate that. And there's another opportunity to celebrate some KPD promotions this Friday. Knoxville Police Department will hold a promotional ceremony for the ranks of Assistant Chief, Deputy Chief, Captain, Lieutenant, and Sergeant. It will be at 3 p.m. at the Sevier Heights North Campus. So hope to see you all there if you're able to attend. And that concludes my mayor's report. Are there any reports from council members? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to item 8A, please.
8A is a resolution reappointing Ellen Lee and George Anna Yarbrough to the Knox County Board of Equalization.
Move to approve.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
8B is a resolution appointing Jody Mullins to serve as a member of the Knoxville City Golf Course Advisory Committee.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
9A is an ordinance to amend Chapter 17, Article 2, Division 4 of the Knoxville City Code relating to the operating procedures of the vehicle impoundment lot.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Oh, I'm sorry.
Not on that item.
Not, this is item A. So, do we have someone? Yeah.
9B.
B, we do.
9B is an ordinance to amend the Knoxville City Code, Appendix B zoning code, Article 10.3B, accessory dwelling unit, to add or amend standards for ADUs, R. Bentley Marlowe applicant, all districts.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Council members, there are 3 people signed up to speak in favor of this item. I'll call them in the order in which they've signed up. First is Ms. Debbie Phillips. Ms. Phillips. Thank you for being here. If you could start by stating your name and address for the record, you'll have up to 5 minutes. If you could turn a little button on for the microphone, yep, you got it.
Okay,
Perfect.
my name is Debbie Phillips, and I live at 1307 Michaels Lane in Norwood. And I just wanted to confirm that with what was talked about the last council meeting, that SEMA had made a motion for the owner to still also occupy the property, if that is in this amendment that you're signing or going to approve tonight.
Yeah, the short answer is yes, it is.
Okay. That's it, folks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips. Next person signed up to speak in favor of this is R. Bentley Marlowe. Mr. Marlowe, are you present? Anybody see Mr. Marlowe? Okay, next is Parker Bartholomew. Mr. Bartholomew, are you present? Okay, if you could come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and you'll have up to 5 minutes.
Parker Bartholomew, 5406 Summit Ridge, 37921. 2 weeks ago, everyone said that they want to help renters, but somehow they also said that we need to prevent investors from creating housing. How do you expect to help renters when you're preventing to increase the supply? By the very definition of a renter, it also means that there's a landlord. We cannot punish landlords while at the same time punishing renters, while without the same time punishing renters. It was said that we do not want investors to own all of our housing in Knoxville, and we cannot allow ADUs to be built by non-owner occupants. It was also said that ADUs will not be affordable. Let's see what the data says and not the fear-mongering. In 2018, following legislative changes at the state level which permitted ADUs by right and eliminated the owner occupancy requirement, a study was done in California. It found that most of the ADUs, 41%, were completed at homes valued over $775,000. High-end neighborhoods, the ones that we're trying to protect, or saying that we're trying to protect, did not think that it lowered their property values. 41% were rented at either low or low to middle rental rates. Only 28% were rented for high rates. They did provide an affordable housing option. In California, 17% of single-family homes are owned by companies or the evil investors. Only 8% of ADUs are. So the fear of investors taking over because ADUs is not justified. So the data shows that ADUs do not drop home values, are rented for lower rates, and do not create a rush of institutional buyers that push out locals. New homes or apartments cannot come close to the low cost of ADUs per unit. There is not a single family house in Knox County that's under $250,000 that's for sale, that's a new construction. One-bedroom apartments cost over $400,000 to build. That includes free land and $30,000 from our affordable rental program. Over half of our city rents, and most of them are cost burden. There's no way to limit the supply of homes and not be pro-renters. ADUs can cost as little as $50,000. I'd love to show you, but I'm not allowed. I can literally create housing that would be rented for $500 per month, but you all will not allow it. Believe it or not, there's homes that are being built in Tennessee right now that will cost less than half that. Yes, $25,000 for the same amount of money that is spent per door on the affordable rental program, you could buy an entire house. There are churches and nonprofits in town that want to build ADUs to provide housing to all types of people. They're not allowed to do that. Why are we not allowing those folks to provide the most cost-effective housing? Our zoning and building code is the #1 reason for lack of affordable housing in this city, and it's something that you all in this room can change. It's 100% in your hands to fix, and for some reason, we're not doing it. Right now, ordinances are being enforced that are against state law. Ordinances like owner occupancy requirements skirt the Fair Housing Act. A pattern can be shown that we go out of our way to prevent affordable housing. From how we calculate a family, to the number of bedrooms, owner occupancy requirements, fire protection interpretations, easements, stormwater requirements, energy code interpretations, rights-of-way, ward maps, tax freezes, congregant living, and many more. All of these are directly in your all's purview, and all of them increase the cost of housing. Tonight, you have the opportunity to remove the owner occupancy requirement. A vote that leaves the owner occupancy requirement in place is a vote for housing discrimination and against any hope of affordable housing in this city. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Marlowe, I see that you've entered the room. Do you still wish to speak on this item? Yes, please. Okay. Please come to the podium, and you'll have up to 5 minutes to address the council.
Hi, R. Bentley Marlowe, Mechanicsville, 322 Douglas Avenue, 37921. So this is before you. This started using the procedures that you or previous councils approved in Recode. I think from discussion last meeting, it's a bit unfair to say that this is a non-proper channel or an improper way to present a zoning change, because previous council saw fit to include this very mechanism. Not only did I follow the rules of the mechanism and pay the fees, planning violated those rules by sidestepping, not this one, but some of the other ones. And then it came here, and then I requested that they all be sent back, which they were. And then they had a second bite at the apple, and planning once again saw fit to bring this to you guys as a proposed ordinance. I believe that is twice now that planning has indicated that this is what they believe in their expertise, which is planning and land use, to be the appropriate way forward. And specifically, that is to remove the owner-occupied restriction. I have no doubt that Mr. Parker's history lesson from last week was reiterated again this week, and a lot of the opposition we're hearing is coming from a select few neighborhoods in Mr. Roberto's district, the 2nd district, the most affluent district in the city. I'm unaware that they're here tonight, but I just got here, so they may be. But I think that it's something that should give pause to all of us, that in a city that's 52% renters, that from the observations of last meeting, 3 neighborhoods each sent 1 representative, and basically they advocated based on fear, and fear that professional data does not support. Our own Optico's report, the expert that we chose, we hired, does not support the fears that they're espousing. And, you know, I mean, it seems very similar, like Mr. Bartholomew said last week. It sounds a lot like the fears that were based in the pigmentation coloring of skin 60 to 75 years ago. And I think enough is enough. I think we've moved on, and I think that we need to leave those days in the past. They are the darkest days of some of our history, particularly our most recent history, post-World War II, and it's time for that to end. We need to be ruling and making decisions for this city based on the best interest of all of us, not select few neighborhoods that have the most wealthy and homogeneous makeup of the entire city. So I would urge you to reconsider putting back in, as planning has now suggested twice, removing the owner-occupied restriction to the zoning code. And I also believe that we should seriously I mean, call it what it is, that this is not an inappropriate mechanism to bring it before you. There was nothing short-sighted or short-circuiting public process. I paid the fee, followed the rules that some of you, and certainly prior council during RECODE, enacted. So here I am. I think it should be an up or down vote, and I look forward to further discussion. But I remind you, all of you, that the future of housing requires reforming our zoning code. And that is done by the 9 of you. It does not require the mayor. It does not require public input. It does not require public referendum. It requires the vote and vote your conscience, each and every one of the 9 of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Council members, that concludes the people signed up to speak to item 9B. Councilmember Parker.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to speak to a couple of the comments that were shared tonight. And I did not come prepared to do a full history lesson, but what keeps being shared conflicts with my own understanding of history. As for me, when I am thinking about zoning changes, especially broad zoning changes in our city, and we are looking at making changes to increase affordable housing in Knoxville. However, the tools and the strategies that we are contemplating, we will fully admit, will likely produce housing that does not serve the working class that we are saying that we are changing these policies for. And in my experience, you must put forward policies that have a specific intent behind them. And if we're putting policies forward that don't produce affordable housing, then we have to recognize what are going to be the consequences of that, and how do we then respond to these new conditions that we've created. When I think about urban removal and the policies that were put into place then, a lot of the arguments that were being made at the time were, these are substandard housing, the plumbing's not up to code, and everyone deserves to live in quality housing of a good standard. And so housing was taken away from folks. We can say purchased, whatever. And folks were moved into public housing. And so I take issue with how it seems like my community specifically continues to be used as an excuse for policy changes that we admit aren't going to benefit them. Most likely aren't going to benefit them, at least in the immediate, maybe at some point down the road. I take offense to that as my community continues to be used to justify policies that are not designed to help them. And in fact, we've talked about naturally occurring affordable housing. We're making a lot of these zoning changes and seeing new development and activity in lower income neighborhoods where we do have this naturally occurring affordable housing, where for at least the last few generations, poor parts of our community were able to find a house and become a homeowner in neighborhoods that were less desirable than other parts. Now we're going into those very neighborhoods and making zoning changes that could push these folks out of the neighborhood. I am open to a longer discussion about some of these zoning changes, including owner-occupied ADUs. But unfortunately, what's come before us hasn't been put through that rigor that I would appreciate. And so I'm not able to support it because we're not thinking about the unintended consequences. We're not thinking about how this will impact our naturally occurring affordable housing and the ability of individuals in our community to eventually become homeowners. When we started a lot of these conversations, 4 or 5 years ago, at least on this council, others on council have been having these conversations long before me, we were talking about the wealth gap. We were talking about the lack of home ownership in the African-American community. We were talking about all these issues that deserved a solution. But what we focused on is how to bring more market rate housing into our community.
Councilmember Parker, I'll come back to you after some of your other colleagues have had a chance to speak. Councilmember McKenzie?
Thank you, Mayor. Just well said to this point, Councilmember Parker. But I do want to be really clear that it's just not members of the affluent neighborhoods who are concerned about owner-occupied ADUs and what that could potentially look like. There are people who are in other parts of the community, up to and including parts of my district, who are very much concerned about what that would look like and some of the consequences that could result. And so those folks don't always have the luxury to be able to come down to council meetings and to sign up and speak at public forum, and therefore they look to those of us that sit around this table every other week to be able to advocate and to speak on their behalf. And so as we sit here and we listen to some of the things that are said, some things seem to cross the line a little bit as it relates to some comments this evening. And so I just want to be clear that, yes, folks who are in more affluent communities have the ability to be able to come to the meetings and to speak out, but please do not take that as if homeowners and residents in other parts of the community that are not as affluent don't have opinions and don't look to us to be able to speak on their behalf. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ryder and then Councilmember Thomas. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just want to
Go ahead.
confirm what my colleague, Councilperson McKenzie just said. And in my district, of course, we have people of all levels of incomes, but we also have some of the lower income neighborhoods, and I have gotten extreme, strong opposition to removing these requirements in my neighborhood. So it's not an affluent versus lower income issue at all. So I just wanted to say that I'm having the same experience and getting the same feedback that my colleague is.
Thank you. Councilmember Ryder.
Yeah, I would say that while many of the facts that Mr. Bartholomew shared with us I do agree with, there were a couple of other things that were said. Mr. Marlowe, specifically, you made comments about the process and how the ability to pay to have something heard was part of the recode process, and that is factually true. And there were a couple of comments about the Planning Commission. So I think it needs to be clarified that there is the Planning Commission, formerly known as MPC, the staff recommendation, and then there's the Planning Commissioners who vote on. The planning staff recommendation was not to reverse owner-occupied. I'm not commenting on my own feelings about that. I'm just saying that that was one piece. And then the Planning Commissioners chose to remove that. That was their vote, and it was a very split vote. I think for public record, it needs to be noted that that was not a widely, it wasn't unanimous. It was quite the split vote, and there were members that were not present that would have voted the other way. It was a tight margin. And one thing that I think is distinctly needs to be noted is that when missing middle housing came through Planning Commission, the planning commissioners, not to be confused with the planning staff recommendation, specifically put a pause and postponement and gave the city administration the directive to take missing middle housing back out to the neighborhoods for additional input and go make round-robin meetings with our neighborhood groups. So one of the comments that you made, Mr. Marlowe, was that we need to make the decision that our heart tells us to make, and we don't need to include public input. I may not agree with all the public input that I have, that I receive on any side of an issue, but I take offense at the I don't need to consider public input. I hope that maybe I've misunderstood what you said, but I think that for the public record, and I believe that is what some of my colleagues are saying, is the public input that we are getting is not necessarily from one neighborhood. Missing middle housing, even though that was controversy, and there were plenty of neighborhoods that were not okay with that change as well. There was input that was in opposition to it. It still passed. It went out. It was shopped around and spoken to at length with neighborhoods per the commissioners, who apparently didn't think that this component needed to be gone out to the neighborhoods. So juxtaposed. I'm going to stick with what we passed last time and stick with the same vote that I had last time. I think that if in the future we decide this needs to be looked at and studied, I believe that's what we said in the last meeting. We talked about there were comments to Ms. Brooks or to city staff about looking at and doing a better review of what other cities do. The majority of cities do require owner-occupied with ADUs. Although I will point out that owner-occupied with ADUs is not a whole lot different when at this moment you can do a duplex. So don't do an ADU, do a duplex, get a use on review. It's not a whole lot different. I also have some question, number one, because we just don't have a mechanism, there's no deed restrictions tied to this, for city staff to be monitoring who lives in the houses and at what point they're sold, who lives in the houses. That is something that we haven't mastered and we haven't built into the ordinance. And just for levity and facts, on a closing comment, I'll point out that in Australia they refer to these as Fonzie flats, because if everyone remembers, the Cunninghams, they were worried that their hardware store was, apparently they hit rough times and they needed additional revenues. And so they built an apartment, and there was apparently an older lady that they were gonna rent to, and I believe she had difficulty with the stairs or had a reason that she couldn't go up to the garage apartment. That was Fonzie's mother. It didn't work for her, so she said, how about you rent to my son, Fonzie? And then, there you go. In looking this up, there were a lot of TV shows where there was some element of somebody living in a garage apartment carriage house. So there's my piece of levity to tack on to all our commentary. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Roberta?
Thank you, Mayor, and I just want to thank my colleagues for their comments. We certainly heard from a variety of neighborhoods in our emails, not just the second district, and I appreciate all of you talking about that as well. This is not about one neighborhood or a few neighborhoods. It's about people who own their homes and are concerned about what unintended consequences might come. I do also appreciate the pushback on attempts at making things about, owners versus renters, and this part of the town versus that part of the town of the city, because I don't think that's helpful in trying to solve problems, and I appreciate all of you chiming in to that effect as well. I wanted to also address what Ms. Phillips, who came from Norwood, had to say about when she came earlier. And yes, just like the mayor said, just so everyone's clear, owner occupancy is still in what's being considered to be voted for today. The language that's in there says one of the dwelling units must be occupied by the owner of the property. That language is still in here. So passage of this on second reading maintains owner occupancy, just so it's clear for everybody. The other part that I just wanted to mention too is, there are mechanisms for having additional units on a lot in an RN1 or an RN2, and that's doing a duplex. And that you can do. You have to go through and collect public input, and we have a public process called the special use. That's how that goes through. ADUs don't have a special use. It's a use by right. So that means that you can just get a permit and build it. There's no public input. And so I thought the comments about public input were particularly important because I think it is important to have public input on those kinds of decisions. So there are differences between ADUs and other types of property, and I think this council's taking action to preserve this protection, because I think you can go talk to any realtor right now and they'll tell you they've got 15, 20 investors lined up to buy anything that goes on the market. And we want to make sure that people can own homes too, not just investors. It's not about investors against anyone else. It's about making sure that the rules are fair so that everybody has an opportunity to be an owner if they can. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Singh.
Thank you, Mayor. In our emails that we got, especially 2 weeks ago, and then they've still been dribbling in, it was from a variety of neighborhoods. There were a few neighborhoods that were heavy on the emails. But what I also noticed is that I didn't go through and count, but I don't know how many emails were from renters. I think they were all from homeowners. Not all, mostly from homeowners. So when we're getting public input, we're getting, what is it, 53% of the city is renters. So there are half the people that are not in this conversation. That's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Parker.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to follow up with what Councilperson Singh said, I think the reason why we're not hearing from renters is because they fully believe this conversation isn't about them. They need something today, tomorrow, in the next 6 months. And we're talking about, changes to zoning that the city staff have promised us is a slow drip that's gonna happen in neighborhoods. That's what the community's hearing. We're spending, how long have we been working on these issues? A couple of years to get a slow drip. So renters are waiting to hear about the windfall of housing. Not us pat ourselves on the back for continuing to push affordable housing projects going. They want to know when are the solutions going to be put in place. What I wanted to respond to was the comment about the Opticos report and my concerns about some of these changes that we're making. I believe we've already, as a city, dipped our toes into middle housing with the South Waterfront, with the form-based code. But we've refused as a city to evaluate it as a city. There's a working group looking at form-based code, suggesting changes. When I had a conversation about missing middle, there were a couple of lessons learned. The administrative review process is going to be a little bit different. But I don't feel comfortable that we are actually following the advice of Opticos. If we were following the advice of Opticos, we would have spent more time reviewing what was done on the South Waterfront and how that's impacted various neighborhoods. And there are some people who are happy with what's happened on the South Waterfront, but there are lots who are not. There are good parts of it to me, But man, there are really bad parts of it to me. Someone who went to South Knoxville Elementary, grew up walking up Davenport, living on Sherrod Road. That's the neighborhood I grew up in. And so my preference would be that we learn from situations before we move forward with wide sweeping policy changes. But I haven't seen us willing to do that, and so that's why I didn't support missing middle, and that's why I'm not willing to support. I'm actually uncomfortable with some of the changes that we've made to this ordinance, but I'm willing to compromise, but not on the owner occupancy, because we haven't discussed it enough, those unintended consequences, and we haven't gone back to our original stated goals of addressing the affordable housing crisis, of addressing the growing wealth gap, of addressing the lack of home ownership among certain portions of our population. Last thing I heard about the home ownership piece was we were going to give some money to the Urban League for financial consulting on how to purchase a home. And I found that so insulting, knowing what market we're in right now, knowing the history of racial discrimination in our housing market in the city, and our only focus is on some financial coaching for members of our community who've been unable to purchase a home. So I support an incentive program for ADUs. I support very intentional policy changes and programs that work to help us build healthy neighborhoods that aren't majority investment owned. But I don't support, and I don't really appreciate the comments that have been made about these decisions being discriminatory, because, at least from my perspective, I am thinking about those low-income folks, those racial minorities who've been blocked out of the housing market and need our support and assistance to address those issues.
Thank you, Councilmember Parker. Councilmember Thomas?
Yes, just a few brief comments. I haven't said a lot during these discussions, and part of it is because I had pretty much been confirmed with my position of the owner occupancy being retained. And it's not because I'm closed-minded or anything, but I've been through this vetting process, or have been through the process of evaluating this before, and the city has. And it wasn't that too long ago that we had lots of public input. A previous body evaluated this, and it became pretty much established that owner occupancy was the way to go. And I haven't heard anything since then, or my constituents haven't prevailed on me to change my mind in any way. So I feel very confident that I'm keeping the owner occupancy, has followed all the processes beforehand, and that it's the right thing to do. And I think it's been vetted by both previous administrations, our administration, the planning staff, and the public. So I will continue to vote for this amendment.
Vice Mayor Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick comment. I don't have anything really unique to add, but I'll reiterate the point I made a couple weeks ago. I think it's really important as zoning proposals come before this council in the midst of a housing crisis, that we don't feel that every policy change carries the burden of the entire housing challenge. So rightly or wrongly, a lot of times we're asked to put the whole weight of our housing challenge on one specific vote as if it's going to solve everything. And I just want to reiterate that based on our workshop recently, based on a lot of comments we've all had, each housing policy fits a need in the housing ecosystem. One policy doesn't solve them all. And so I just want to refresh that for this council. This council has approved a diverse number of pilots, other zoning changes. And so we've, 20 plus zoning or housing related changes over just the past 2 years. So I don't think it's important. I don't think it's on us to take every measure or every vote and put the blanket weight of the entire housing crisis on it. So I think where we landed last council meeting is appropriate. I think where we are today for this vote is appropriate, and I'll be supporting this amended version from last week, or last meeting.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Vice Mayor, your light is still on. Seeing no other questions or comments, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next item.
9C is an ordinance approving the request of Benjamin C. Mullins for an amendment to the North City Sector Plan from low-density residential to medium-density residential office for property located at 5421, 5500, 5504, 5510, and 5520 Pratt Road for a portion of property located at 5418 Pratt Road, 5th District.
Move to approve.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Councilmember Thomas.
I was just waiting to second the next, or make
Okay.
the next motion, Mayor.
Seeing no other questions or comments, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
9D is an ordinance approving the request of Benjamin C. Mullins for a one-year plan amendment from low-density residential to medium-density residential office for property located at 5421, 5500, 5504, 5510, and 5520 Pratt Road for a portion of property located at 5418 Pratt Road, 5th District.
Move to approve.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
9E is an ordinance to change the base zoning classification for property located at 5421, 5500, 5504, 5510, and 5520 Pratt Road, and for a portion of property located at 5418 Pratt Road from RN1 District to RN5 District. Benjamin C. Mullins, applicant, 5th District.
Move to approve.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
11A is a resolution to amend and reinstate the Knoxville, Farragut, Knox County Growth Policy Plan dated January 10, 2024, per Tennessee Code annotated section 6-58-101 and following.
Motion made to approve and seconded. There's several people. Okay, excuse me just a minute. Okay, just making sure we have the order correct. So the first person signed up to speak in favor of item 11A is Chris Caldwell, the Finance Director of Knox County. Mr. Caldwell, if you could please, you know the drill, please come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and welcome to the City Council meeting. You'll have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, members of City Council. We're asking for your support to help move Knox County forward by approving the proposed growth policy plan. In 2021, Knox County started the process to create a new comprehensive land use and transportation plan. This came after the Growth Policy Committee reconvened in 2019, and at the time, Knoxville and Farragut leaders asked us to update our general plan to address the infrastructure concerns. In other words, it was suggested that we take a proactive approach rather than be reactive. We agreed and also decided to take it a step further and create our first land use and transportation plan. And Knox County in the past had never looked at land use and infrastructure together. We then spent the past couple of years holding numerous rounds of public meetings and compiling data from our technical committee members, stakeholders, utility providers, and subcommittees, all leading to the creation of a future land use map and comprehensive plan. That data, which helps align infrastructure and land use, has led to the proposed amendment that is on your agenda. We have done a lot of work, but we still have more ahead of us. Your approval of the growth policy plan is simply the first step in the adoption process. I would like to refer you to the Knoxville and Knox County Planning's relationship of plans document. This file shows the growth plan as the top layer, the plan that determines where our growth boundaries are before the Knox County Commission can approve the future land use map. The county commission has already signed off on the growth policy plan in a unanimous 11-0 vote during their February 26th meeting, but it was contingent on the adoption of the comprehensive plan. This means the growth policy plan will not go into effect until the Planning Commission and the County Commission have approved and adopted the comprehensive plan and future land use map. During the next month, we will work with commissioners on the Hillside Ridgetop Plan and other requests we receive. You can find any changes or requests on the Advanced Knox website. Again, we ask for your support to help move Knox County forward by approving the proposed growth policy plan. This will allow us to take the next step in adopting our future land use map and comprehensive plan and to create a coordinated approach to infrastructure and land use, mindful growth, and a roadmap for the future. Thank you for your support. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Next person signed up to speak in favor of this is Amy Nolan.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Amy Nolan, 17 Market Square, Knoxville Chamber. The Knoxville Chamber, as part of per state law, was represented on the Growth Policy Committee and voted to approve Knox County Mayor Glenn Jacobs' proposed amendment. The Chamber recognizes that the current guidelines developed more than 20 years ago have led, in many cases, to sprawling subdivisions that consume green space and farmland without the proper roads and commercial hubs to support them. What is before you tonight is an effort to extend the planned growth area, which will result in a variety of housing styles not currently possible in the county and allow less development in the rural areas. The amendment was developed after 2 years of meetings of stakeholders, intergovernmental technical committees, as well as many surveys, publicly advertised meetings, and targeted workshops. I think at Planning Commission today, the county mentioned that they had over 5,200 touches. Some of those might have been the same people, but that's how many touches they had from surveys, meetings, and the like. Consultants and staff were left with with dueling priorities: to create more housing and preserve green space. And we believe this amendment strikes that balance. Keeping the status quo is estimated to result in an annual $2 million deficit as infrastructure struggles to keep up with sprawl, which is what the current plan allows. This plan would save the county nearly $5 million, money that can be used to invest in education, infrastructure, and parks. Your vote tonight is just the first step in creating a land use plan for Knox County that is married to the infrastructure plan for Knox County. Many more opportunities will exist for the public to engage in the details, to advocate for changes in the details, including approval of a comprehensive future land use map and a unified building code. Tonight's vote is an important first step to ensuring that Knox County will grow with appropriate infrastructure, more variety in housing, and at a cost that is not burden for taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person signed up to speak in favor is Hanson Sale.
Hanson Sales 609 Weisgarber. I'm here on behalf of East Tennessee Realtors speaking in support of the growth policy amendments. I do want to first, I think it's always important to preface these conversations with data. As you all know, housing costs have significantly outpaced incomes over the past 5 years, and we're in a situation affordability-wise that's pretty much similar to the 1980s when mortgage rates were 15%. And it's the most acute crisis we've faced in a long time. In 2023, families needed an annual income of over $94,000 to purchase the median-priced home, and the median household income in Knox County is just $70,000. So as a result, roughly 2 in 3 residents in Knox County cannot afford to purchase a home. It's a crisis that's most acute for many of our cities and counties' most essential workers, and the data really bears this out. The starting salary for a KPD officer, it's enough to afford 2% of the homes on the market on any given day. So I submit to you what happens when our police officers can't afford to live in the community in which they serve. The starting salary for a teacher is, again, enough to afford 2% of homes. So what happens when we don't have enough teachers to teach our kids? The median salary for a registered nurse, enough to afford 5% of homes on the market. And many of us have seen over the last few years firsthand what happens when hospital emergency rooms are understaffed. These are the people who are hurt the worst and the most when we fail to plan for growth and to assure that our land use policies reflect the current needs and priorities of our county. And if we are actually to address the housing crisis, we cannot continue to rely on plans that are more than 20 years old and reflect the needs and priorities of our community from 20 years ago. It's also important to remember the proposed amendments are a healthy compromise intended to promote responsible growth. The first part of that is preserving our county's rural landscape by reducing density from 3 units an acre to 2 in all of the rural areas. And in fact, 93% of the rural areas right now will stay rural and have their density reduced. And I can assure you that this will be the first and the last time I ever come before you and advocate for reducing density. The amendments, secondly, will work to address our growing housing crisis by moving 7% of the land that's currently rural into the planned growth areas and expanding development potential in the areas that are well served by existing infrastructure. These areas, some people say these aren't the right areas, but it's important to recognize these are the areas that were identified through a rigorous planning process that included 8 different utility providers, including KUB, TVA, Knox County Schools, and numerous other subject matter experts. Together, these changes will discourage sprawl by making it more expensive to develop in rural places and less expensive to develop in places where infrastructure exists. It's basic economics. And maybe it might also spur some development on those commercial corridors we've all been talking about. We must also remember that these amendments didn't just come out of nowhere. They are the direct result of a rigorous 2-year public planning process which engaged thousands of city and county residents alike. And voting to reject the growth plan would amount to council overriding this very long and intensive public process. Lastly, it's also important to consider the facts and the reality. Mayor Jacobs has stated publicly that he will not reconvene the Growth Policy Coordinating Committee. So really, we have one choice tonight. It's to vote to approve the Growth Policy Plan as proposed, or to reject the Growth Policy Plan and force the county to use a 20-year-old growth map that represents where we thought growth would occur 20 years ago. So remember, those who are asking you to reject the plan or postpone are in fact asking you to force the county to rely on a 20-year-old plan that created the problem that we're trying to achieve in the first place. In other words, rejecting the growth policy plan is tantamount to maintaining the status quo and continuing the sprawl that these amendments are designed to address. We can't forget that point. For these reasons, our association asks that you vote to approve the plan before you tonight. It's something that's necessary, and it's the first step in addressing the housing situation that we have all been facing for the last 5 years.
Thank you. Council members, there's 2 people who signed up to speak, and they've said they're neutral or in opposition. It's a little ambiguous, so I'll go ahead and call on them. First is Kevin Murphy. Mr. Murphy, are you present? Okay. Next is Wolf Najeli. Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Murphy. If you could start by stating your name and address for the record, you'll have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Kevin Murphy, 4508 Murphy Road. I'm here neutral in support of this growth plan amendment that's in front of you tonight. This is a much better amendment than this council saw about 4 or 5 years ago that came. I'm very happy about that. The one issue that I do want to talk and just bring your attention to that really does impact the city of Knoxville the most is probably the 4,800 acres of planned growth expansion in the northeast county. That large area of planned growth expansion is pretty much dependent on traveling through city-owned infrastructure to reach most of the employment centers. Reason why it's important is Northeast Knox and that area, the Northeast Knox sector doesn't have a lot of employment. I was just looking at the Northeast Knox sector plan, and these figures are from 2011, take them with a little bit of salt. But there were about at that time, about 95% of residents in the Northeast Knox sector commuted outside of that sector for work. So there's really, when you add residents in that area, a lot of the employment and transport, is going out. Now that hits 3 or 4 major city-owned corridors. The city has annexed and has Tazewell Pike out to about Murphy Road, or maybe a little bit past. You have Washington Pike to Murphy Road. You have Millertown Pike from the interstate out to the Norfolk Southern Railroad Bridge, and then you have Rutledge Pike as well. I was looking, trying to figure out, where are we with traffic counts and, where are you with that infrastructure? Your Millertown Pike, which I think, if any of you remember, the city did a lot of work on Millertown Pike about 5 or 6 years ago through the mall area, which has helped some, but I just looked at the trip count, and last year it was 17,800 in that section between Kinsell Way and Loves Creek Road. A 2-lane road with turn lanes, feels really congested at about 18,000 cars. So you're really maxed out on Millertown Pike. The second one, Washington Pike, obviously you're well aware that you're spending a lot of money to improve that and that design capacity. Still though, I was looking at Washington Pike between Mill Road and Target, which is going to be 3 lanes with a turn lane. That right now is at 14,200 cars, so you're getting close already to that 18,000 car count. You've got a little bit more overhead between Mill Road and out to Washington Pike, where Murphy Road, where you're going to be 5-laning it. But you're still, that section right now is 21,000 cars, and those roads start to feel really crowded and congested at about 36,000. So there's a lot of potential impact to city infrastructure and transit, and that's something that when this planned growth area is being proposed will probably create problems for the city over the next 10 and 20 years. If you want to use really round numbers and low numbers to give you an idea of magnitude, let's say it's 5,000 acres. 2 units an acre is a rough build out. Now some of that's developed, some of it's golf course and the detention center, but let's say it's 2 units an acre. That's about 10,000 units out there eventually. That 10,000 units could potentially be 5 trips a day. That's 50,000 trips. So anyways, there's a lot of potential transportation issues down there. And I think that's something for City Council to consider. If you do approve tonight, I would ask, and maybe thinking of adding a similar contingent the County Commission did, where you just pass the growth plan amendment, but contingent on the County Commission adopting a new land use plan. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next person signed up to speak on this in, I think, opposition. I'm not sure. Wolf, how do you say, Nageley?
Wolf Nageley.
Nageley. Mr. Nageley, if you could start by stating your name and address for the record, and you'll have up to 5 minutes.
Wolf Nageley, 4425 Balraj Lane. And I'm speaking on behalf of the Foundation for Global Sustainability. We urge you to reject the proposed growth policy plan for 2 primary reasons. First, for the irresponsibly vast amount of good farmland and minimally disturbed acreage it wants to move into the planned growth area, something that for all practical purposes is irreversible. Second, for its failure to sincerely consider its impacts on community resilience, on environmental sustainability, and on the future of existing neighborhoods and their property owners. Today, we face much greater uncertainty about the future of our country and our county than ever in its history. The impacts of increasing automation, artificial intelligence, and business consolidations on our economy are hard to predict. We got surprised by COVID-19 and how much disruption it caused, but there are also a lot of other global polycrises that could affect us very strongly. Most of all, climate change, biodiversity loss, hunger, human displacement, and rearmament. The draft comprehensive plan has not even attempted to consider any of these factors and failed to assess likely socioeconomic policy outcomes. So it's all sort of hypothetical without really any serious study of what the outcomes could be under different scenarios of how development will occur. With every passing month, it appears more likely global warming may reach or even exceed 3 degrees centigrade rather than the 1.5 degrees that was adopted by the Paris Agreement. And more it becomes clear that the cost of living is going up worldwide in tandem with increase of global warming, because crops are failing, there are more floodings, there are more storms, more damages, which all increase the costs. And now, for example, they can't even get the Panama Canal supplied with enough fresh water to transport a lot of the food that needs to go through the Panama Canal. So we need to protect our fertile soils much better, and young farmers find it exceedingly difficult to find affordable farmland. Community-supported agriculture and community gardens are valuable components of community resilience. And that's even true for the people who live in the city, because we need the surrounding farms much more to supply our farmers' markets. And once farmland has been converted or opened to development, it can't be reversed. Because first of all, you couldn't pay the landowners for the lost income if you wanted to put it back into agricultural protection. And also, if you have built on the soils, you can't practically restore them, because the quality of the soils will too much degraded to make it practical to farm them sustainably and economically in the future. The current growth policy plan was never meant to last for the 20+ years. Yet the proposed growth policy plan seems to be geared for another 20 years. They want to put so much land from agriculture into growth, plant growth, which could last for quite a while, but it will also make it much more sprawled. Because if you open a lot of it at the same time, of course there is more pressure and into the different areas rather than focusing on the ones that are best suited for development based on the transportation, on the services. And that's really for the future of current homeowners, property owners in Knox County and taxpayers, essentially, because you need to consider the costs down the line for the road improvements and the social services that are needed and the first response services.
Thank you very much. That your 5 minutes are up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council members, that concludes the people who signed up to speak on this item. Any questions or discussion? Councilmember Ryder.
Yeah, I don't know if this is a question for Ms. Brooks and/or Mandy Benedict, so I don't know if Ms. Benedict wants to move towards the front, and I'll kind of work on my question here. So there's a lot of references in feedback that we've gotten from the community, as well as some of the comments that were made tonight. We are voting on, as well as the city of Farragut, are voting on the growth policy plan. Is that correct, Ms. Brooks? Not the comprehensive plan?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So the comprehensive plan, what process or stage is the comprehensive plan in? Where are you guys on that one?
Amy Brooks, Knox County Planning. Currently, we have had a draft of the comprehensive plan posted on the Advanced Knox website since October. A final draft plan. It is going before the Planning Commission this week on Thursday. County Commission will have a workshop on it later this month, and it'll be voted on by County Commission as well, potentially.
Okay. But City Council nor the City of Farragut are voting on the comprehensive plan?
No, it is only
Okay.
for the unincorporated areas of the county.
Okay. And what county commission passed, what we have before us to vote on is vote up or down on the growth plan, correct? Which is basically maps.
It's the maps and the additional edits to the growth policy plan, correct? Yes.
Okay.
Vote up or down.
And what county commission voted on was making that, the passage of it contingent on passing the comprehensive plan, is that correct?
They voted unanimously to approve the amendments, but they didn't want it to go into effect until the comprehensive plan was voted on and went into effect.
And so what that does is it leaves the old the old growth policy plan in place until the new comp plan is passed.
Correct.
Okay. I just think it's really important to clarify some of this, some of the feedback that's come from community members on what we're voting on is pointing to things that are in the comp plan, which we don't vote on. And so there's been muddying of the water and unclarity. I know I have colleagues here that want to vote on things, or have their own comments to make, but I would potentially make a friendly amendment to mirror what the Planning Commission did, County Commission did, which is to amend and make this passage of the growth policy plan contingent on passage of the comprehensive plan.
Thank you, Councilmember Ryder. Councilmember Fugit.
Ms. Brooks, I also want to be sure that I understand it takes all three bodies to approve this. So if any one of the three bodies does not approve this, we have no new,
Yes.
no
that is-
growth policy.
That is
So-
correct.
So if, I appreciate what Councilwoman Ryder said, but even if we approved it, if the county commission doesn't get what they want, then it won't, if it's contingent upon taking effect when the comprehensive plan is done, this wouldn't take effect countywide until such time, correct?
Yes, that is correct. And the town of Farragut also still has to consider this as well.
Right, but if any, I guess what I'm saying is, the thing that we're worried about, if we're concerned, is that if we vote yes with no contingency upon it, the county commission contingency still is out there, so it would not take effect even if we did not make that amendment.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Parker?
Thank you, Mayor. And the growth policy plan is coming before City Council as a requirement of state law. Is that correct? Do you have an understanding of that state law and why it requires the votes of City of Knoxville, Town of Farragut, and the county to approve the growth policy plan?
Yeah, I wasn't around when it was originally crafted, the legislation. I think the intent was to encourage jurisdictions that are within the same county to work together.
Yeah. My concern with this process is that without knowing what the end results are, it seems like our vote today would be, the county may adopt additional changes. We'll adopt a comprehensive land use plan that we will not have seen before we approve this growth policy plan. And it seems like we are assuming those are decisions that should be made by the county and would only need our approval. I'm a little unclear on why we would have a role to vote in this process if we do not wait for all final documents to be finalized before we vote? That would be my question. That's where my head is at the moment.
Thank you, Councilmember Ryder, then Councilmember Fugit. And then I'll go over to that side.
I want to,
I'll go.
Ms. Brooks, am I next?
Yeah,
or-
well, since they haven't had, a
Oh,
chance-
they
I
haven't
didn't see
had
their
your-
lights on, so I'm sorry. Vice Mayor Smith and then
Okay,
Councilmember Thomas.
I don't,
We'll
that's
come back
fine.
to you, Ms.
It's
Ryder.
fine,
We'll come
it's
back to
fine.
you.
We voted on something similar.
I had something to say to something. It's okay. It'll come, you have a chance. It's not over yet. Vice Mayor Smith.
I was going to ask Mr. Frost if you'd address that question, good question from Councilman Parker.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I think part of this issue, I was talking with Law Director Swanson today, and I jokingly said, where's Commissioner Frank Luthold when you need him? There was a very divisive time, it ebb and flow in the history between the city and county and the number of annexations that the city did. So part of this, at the time, was negotiated between the city and the county, and Mr. Luthold was one of the people involved, where it laid out the areas where the city could annex and the county would not object to. Now, individual property owners could and did object to some of those annexations, but part of this was to, one of the reasons I think was to get local people talking about it to try to avoid the situation that came into being some of the time, 20-something years ago approximately. So that's part of the reason there, because if there's an agreement at the time where the city could annex out into the unincorporated parts of the county, that was done by agreement to try to turn down the temperature of the situation.
Councilmember Thomas? Do you I need to turn your microphone on.
It's more of a comment, I think, than anything else. I do share concerns that we haven't seen the comprehensive plan yet, and we're going to be voting on something before we have all the information. I do understand this impacts the county more than the city, but as Mr. Murphy had said, there's possibly consequences of the plan to the city. So I'm wondering what the drawback would be for us to delay our vote until we had all the information in front of us. I guess I'm a little bit concerned about being surprised by what may come out of the comprehensive plan if I haven't seen it. So those are kind of my thoughts.
Councilmember Thomas, I think there's some downsides to postponement. We're not going to, no matter what county commission does with their own land use ordinances, we don't get to determine that. That's their authority, that's their obligation. They already passed this growth policy plan contingent on their approval of that it won't take effect until City Council and Town of Farragut have approved it. So delaying, I don't think postponement aids the process. I also think while there are obviously impacts to the city, we're all Knox County residents. There's no, we all pay our Knox County taxes. We're all affected by the land uses throughout our community. The air pollution, the water pollution, or lack thereof affects us all. To me, the big danger of delay is that it will just revert to the status quo, which is unfettered growth without a lot of planning, and it's sprawl, and that's hurting us already. So the choice is not between an amazing, perfect plan that everything is just right and this that you're voting on. It's this or the status quo. So I think postponement has some downsides. Law Director Swanson had something he wanted to share to add some information and an insight. Mr. Swanson?
I'm just concerned that there might be a little misunderstanding about what the impact will be with regard to the county's adoption of their comprehensive plan. This plan is not going to change. If this plan changes, then it's got to come back here. But if you pass this plan tonight, it's only this plan that's going to be passed. So if county commission comes back and changes their plan in some way, which they don't really plan to do, they really plan to pass their comprehensive plan that only applies within the county, doesn't apply within the city. But if they change their growth plan in some way, it's got to come back here. They're not going to be able to make changes in their comprehensive plan that will in some way change this growth plan so that what you've approved is something that you didn't see. That won't be the case at all. If they don't approve it as it is right now, then it will not be approved unless you all subsequently approve it again. And if you make city council's approval contingent upon the county's approval of the comprehensive plan, that's really surplusage because the county commission already did that. And so it doesn't really make any difference whether you do it or not, because if they don't do it, then they don't have a plan and it's going to have to come back to you again.
Councilmember Roberto?
Thank you, Mayor. I think what Director Swanson said and Mr. Frost said is completely correct. I think the focus we have to have tonight is on what City Council has a vote on, which is the growth policy plan. We don't have a vote on what County Commission does for their comprehensive plan that affects the county. We don't have a say in that. So if I focus my thoughts and comments on the amendments to the growth policy plan, I think that's the way I view the right approach for us this evening. I also wanted to concur with what Mr. Murphy said. You know, he did talk about impact on city infrastructure. And what the mayor said is correct. What he said was correct. You know, we're all county residents as well as city residents. So we all have an impact here. The impact on city infrastructure, specifically, we're thinking about traffic, which Mr. Murphy talked about, and we're talking about water flow and flooding. Some of the comments that were made about, you know, this amendment, we're talking about responsible growth, and I'm a major advocate for smart growth, addressing sprawling neighborhoods without proper roads into the rural area. And it was correct that the reduction, what you see in the growth policy plan is a reduction from a maximum of 3 units down to 2 units per acre. So that is a reduction, and so that was correct with what was said. But the troubling part for me is that the amendment to the growth policy plan removes the requirement for a traffic analysis. And so when we're talking about proper roads into the rural area, that's troubling. I'm not sure why that language is being removed. It does add a requirement for a 2-lane paved road being part of that infrastructure that you have to put in. So the same water and sewage issues that were in the old or the current growth policy plan are still there. So that infrastructure is still there, but it adds the requirement for a 2-lane road. It also removes the requirement that it go through the planned, that these developments in the rural area go through the planned residential process, which I think is a great tool, and I wish we had it in the city. So I'm not sure why that's being removed. It also removes all the language about hillside and ridgetop protection in the rural area and replaces it with rezoning of slopes shall be based on the adopted policies of each legislative body. To be clear, the city of Knoxville is the only one of the legislative bodies that have a vote that have codified, meaning that we've adopted hillside ridgetop. I don't have a vote on whether the county decides that or not, but it is troubling that that language is removed here. I did have, I've got a little bit of time, some questions for Ms. Brooks, I think just for some clarification. When I look at the maps, and I think that when the public looks at the maps, and it may just be my eyesight's poor, it could also be that the detail on the maps are a little tough to read. It's obvious that there are changes, But it doesn't look like there's, giant changes to where the rural area is. It looks pretty much intact from what it was in the current version. And then, there's not really any change to the urban area. And then the growth area looks like it changed a little bit. But, can you talk to us a little bit about what has changed in the map between what's current and then, because it looks almost the same.
Ms. Brooks?
Yes, I can start to answer that, and then I might ask my colleagues to weigh in as well. Yes, so, Councilmember, you are correct. The growth of the rural area remains primarily intact. There is an increase of 7% of the planned growth area, and that's equals 14 and a half square miles. Does that answer your question?
That does.
Okay.
And what is the impact in the rural?
In the rural area?
Yeah.
14 and a half square miles.
Is that reduction?
Yes.
Okay, so 14 and a half reduction in rural. You guys are welcome to comment on if my analysis of what the changes are is incorrect, then obviously I want to be corrected, but that's the way I read what the amendments do, and I think I'm out of time, but I appreciate it.
Thank you. I'll go back to Councilmember Ryder, Fugit, and Parker.
Mr. Frost, one thing that got thrown out was to postpone it. What are the consequences of if we don't pass?
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Or if we don't vote on it,
Well,
I guess,
I
is part of it.
reviewed 68-58-104, and this body must act within 120 days after they receive the recommended growth plan from the county. If they fail to do so, it's deemed adopted. So the city council has the ability to either ratify or reject the recommended growth plan. Revise it is not an option. It's either ratify or reject.
Or not act on it and it passes
Correct.
over 120 days. Okay. Ms. Brooks, this is the first step in revising the land use plans for the county. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. So if we don't know where those boundaries are that are defined by this growth policy plan, we really can't complete the comprehensive land use and transportation plan.
Okay. One of the things that I needed clarity with, and I hadn't had time to look it up, 4 of us, of the 9 of us sitting up here, council members, were on the previous council makeup, pre-2019, December 19, and we voted, there was a question about why are we voting on this? And Mr. Frost answered with a good history lesson on part of why we might be involved on it. But just for historical purposes, I love the history and the facts, we were presented with the vote to remove ourselves from the ability to vote on this, and that did not happen. So I think it's important to know that we only vote on the growth plan, but not the next steps. And looking at the maps, so there's maps and there's how many pages of text that go along with the maps that we're voting on?
We'll double check here.
Well, okay, how about this?
We think 3.
So Councilman Roberto asked about the hillside ridgetop component being removed from the growth policy plan. Can you clarify that for me? Is there language about hillside ridgetops that's removed?
Yes, I think the intent of refining that language was to acknowledge that each jurisdiction has different policies related to hillside and ridgetop, the
Okay,
hillside and ridgetop plan.
because the city has always had, or I shouldn't say always, the city since the council before my time, 2017, in fact, it put in place a growth, hillside ridgetop protection for the city of Knoxville.
That is correct, and it was not codified until the update to the city zoning code in 2019.
Okay, so the city did that, but the county did not.
It is advisory only in the county currently.
Okay, it's advisory only. So what are the impacts of removing it from the growth policy plan in what we're voting on tonight?
There are no impacts.
Okay.
In order to, the county commission, it's a legislative action. If they so choose, they could still choose to adopt that plan and incorporate it into their land use plan.
Okay, so we're not removing something that they weren't doing in the first place?
That's correct.
Okay.
Councilmember Fugit?
Thank you, Mayor. I fully intend to support this. I think what we're hearing is that it is the county's responsibility. It's the county's plan to set this growth policy. We have benefited, and the objective of talking about it and us understanding the implications that this new boundary will have on the city is good for us to know. That's the point. We're not surprised. I would also like to remind everyone who has real concerns about this, who lives within the city limits, to participate in the county's comprehensive plan that they will do after they have a growth policy plan to begin the work. I think I'm naming these things correctly, but it's late and I might have them backwards. But I just think that city residents also need to understand they are county residents too, and please participate in that and talk to your county commissioners who will vote on that, who also represent the city. It's not that city residents don't have a voice in this, they do, but it's through their county commissioners on some of those actions that are the county purview. But if you live in the city, the things that are codified in the city, this doesn't take away. Am I correct, Ms. Brooks?
Yes, you are.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Parker?
Thank you, Mayor. My issue is still with the process. If we are a party to this vote, then this is our space for negotiation, as far as I see it. The county has started this process, and I imagine doesn't want the city of Knoxville or the town of Farragut to vote it down and have all that work go away. And so as we have questions or concerns, to me, this would be our opportunity to have those conversations. It's been presented to us. Now we have 120 days to decide whether to take action on it or not. To have a process in place where we acknowledge that we have a limited role, but we do have a role. But because that role is limited, we essentially just follow the county, and we don't really have our own position on this process. It concerns me. So I would, and I've been listening. We can amend this, because one of my thoughts was, to consider the boundaries that have been changed, the maps that have been changed, but not the other changes. It doesn't sound like that's a possibility. But what is a possibility is a postponement. And there could be changes made to the growth policy plan. There could be discussions that take place. There could be further clarification, that is had as we prepare for a final vote. Without that sort of process in place, I don't believe if, kind of speaking to what was said earlier, we are fulfilling the intent behind the state law for us to work together as three governments to achieve the best outcome. We're simply following the lead of the county. I think that it is incumbent upon us to do more than that.
Thank you. Councilmember Helsley? Oh, no? Okay. Okay. Any further questions or comments? Councilmember Parker?
I'll make a motion that we postpone this item until our April 30th city council meeting.
There's a motion to postpone. Is there a second? Motion fails for lack of a second. Back to the motion to approve. Vice Mayor Smith.
Just want to clarify, Councilman Ryder, did you make a motion to amend earlier?
I made a motion to amend to mirror what County Commission did. I think they unanimously, from both ends of the political spectrum, supported the growth policy plan that we are faced with voting. They have not surrounded and flanked us with a donut of industrial land. They've reduced density. I could argue that maybe I don't agree with the reduction in density, but maybe that's best. And they put in a very good faith and collaborative effort. If you look at the maps, which is what we're voting on, they put in a good faith collaborative effort with members of the community, I believe, including Kevin Murphy, where areas that are rural now were removed from that map to retain and maintain areas of farmland and rural property. So they greatly reduced, when you mirror over the map, they greatly reduced what they proposed as areas to increase density. And I feel that I'm going to just refresh folks' memory. When a member of County Commission came down here and told us how to do our business, it was not well received. And when they said that our city employees didn't need raises and what we should be doing, it was not well received. It was not well received by our employees. It was not well received by members of council. If it looked from these maps and other things that the county was doing something egregious, which is why we're part of the process, and both ends of their political spectrum unanimously voting to support this with the amendment that I'm going to make, if someone will second it, to pass this contingent on the comprehensive plan, which is their purview to do. And they didn't come tell us how to do recode, though plenty of people had opinions, and they let us know their opinions as our constituents. So I make a motion to adopt the growth plan contingent on them passing the comprehensive plan.
I'll second for a question.
Vice Mayor Smith, your question?
Thank you. And that's just for Mr. Frost or Mr. Swanson. Is that a substantial change to the process that makes it go all the way through this system again, or is this just a belt and suspenders amendment? I think Councilwoman Ryder said it was a friendly amendment. I wanted to make sure that there's not a substantial change.
I wouldn't think it's a substantial change.
Use your microphone.
It's surplusage to me. It's simply what the county already did, and it's related to not this growth plan, but it is related to the county's comprehensive plan. So essentially what you're saying is, we're not going to pass this growth plan unless the county adopts its comprehensive development plan, which County Commission already said, and it's their comprehensive plan. So you're just laying the same wording on top of theirs. Because if they don't pass it, then they don't have a plan under what they passed.
Understood.
And if they don't have
Thank
a
you.
plan, then this plan will not be approved.
All right, so this will mirror what they have passed.
Vice Mayor Smith and Councilmember Ryder, I think this will mirror it, but I think it's also redundant. It's just saying, please do what you already unanimously said you were going to do. And I think that if we had I think we would be doing what you said you didn't want to do, Councilmember Ryder's, like coming in and saying, this is how we think you should do it. We're echoing it, so I just think it's redundant and, doesn't necessarily move the ball forward in any way, because we're just endorsing what they've already said.
11 people.
Okay.
11
Which would be passing the growth policy plan.
I don't.
But, that's just my take on it. I do also want to just say, the city, the way the state law is written, there's a growth plan committee, and the city had representation on that, and that was me, the mayor of the city of Knoxville. I participated in multiple meetings, many hours, reviewed materials, listened to feedback, reviewed the amendments made in response to that feedback, asked questions, realize that, it's hard decisions, listen to various stakeholders. So the city did have a say in the process in addition to city council's vote on the approved growth policy map and plan. So I think the state's law has provided for more collaborative community-wide participation than it otherwise would have. So I'm thankful for that. The plan isn't perfect, but we're very familiar with imperfection and trying to govern the best we can in the face of those challenges. Councilmember Parker.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to respond that City Council did not have a representative on that committee. So it comes before us to vote. We're the legislative body, and we haven't had a representative in this process. And if the state law required approval from the mayors of all three entities, I think it would have been written that way, but it wasn't written that way. It was written for the legislative approval. And so, my opinion is still the same, that this is the beginning of the process, and we are just now engaging in these conversations. We've gotten a couple of updates over the last year at our city council dinners, but we haven't had a conversation to say, hey, to get city council support. This is what we're hearing from our constituents who are also county residents. Unlike those in the county who don't live in city limits, we don't represent them, so I understand them not participating in RECODE. But the county residents who are in the city limits, it makes sense for them to participate in RECODE. It makes sense for county commissioners to participate in RECODE if they're in the city limits, right? But if we represent the city and there's an overlap with county residents in the city, it makes sense that we would have a voice as the legislative body of the city in this process. I'll say it again. It makes sense for us to have a voice in this process because we are a part of the county. Yes, we represent the city, but we are also a part of the county. The county doesn't always participate in our processes because the county commissioners might be located outside of the city limits. They might think they're representing folks who are only outside of the city limits. But some of those county residents do live within the city limits. They're very welcome to participate in our city activities because they're both city and county residents. I don't feel comfortable with voting on something and stating that this is the county's policies to determine, because we have a state law that requires our participation in this process. And this is our opportunity to think about how growth outside of the city limits will impact quality of life here in the city of Knoxville. And that not only includes traffic, but that does include different types of land use. How much agricultural land do we have access to around our community? I'm interested in what happens not only in the city limits, in the unincorporated limits, the rural limits. I believe we should have a voice overall in this process on the growth policy plan. And I will agree with my colleagues that changes I'm seeing, some of the changes I'm seeing I'm in agreement with. But the process is not complete. We don't have a final plan. And we're not using this opportunity to have a voice in the process. That really, it really throws me off that we would not use this as an opportunity to have a voice in this process, but we would just toss the ball back to the county. So I'm not able to support it. We're obviously not going to postpone it, so I'll be voting against this tonight. And And I also, I would love to see us, I hope to be a part of conversations in our community about how we can change this process moving forward so that we do have more participation from city and county residents in this process, and that city residents do feel represented in this process. We are also having discussions and workshops on this issue that we are expected to vote on, and that we're not just tossing the ball over to the county.
Thank you. The motion on the floor is to amend it per Ms. Ryder's proposed amendment. Is that, do you want to restate it? Does everyone know what we're voting on? Do you want to restate it so everyone's clear?
I can read it.
Oh, Mr. Johnson can read it.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Johnson, for being my interpreter.
So the motion is to adopt the county growth policy plan contingent on county commission passing a comprehensive land use plan.
Okay, does everyone understand what you're voting on? So the amendment, okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we must better do a roll call, I think. I think.
Yep.
Yeah, this is a motion to amend it to add the contingency similar to what county commission did already. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. That was a motion to amend it. So the motion to amend, Councilmember Ryder, do you want to clarify that in any way to make sure everybody understands, or do you feel like everyone understands it well enough?
Just in case. My motion is an amendment. Hold on. To pass the growth policy plan as presented, contingent on passing the county's passage of a new comprehensive plan.
Well, maybe the amendment would be to add a contingency, and then go back to the original motion, yeah?
What the county passed, because all I'm trying to do is mirror what the county passed. So if you want to give me that moment, I'll do that.
Okay.
Ms. Brooks, weren't you, and Ms. Benedict, weren't you guys part of that conversation at that meeting? Do you know exactly what county commission passed?
Yes, we are looking it up.
Okay, great.
Mandy, did you?
Councilmember Roberto.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, Councilmember Ryder's looking up that language. I think I love the place where the amendment is coming from. I can't support it because it's redundant, just like the lawyers have said. Likewise, I can't support the growth policy amendment because of the problems that I had with it. I think our choices tonight are we can't make amendments. You can pass it, you can turn it down, or if you want some more time to think about it, you can postpone it for some length of time. I don't see a change happening because the language isn't going to change. So that I'm kind of stuck where I am. But those are your options. And if you guys want more time, I'll support that. I thought going all the way to April 30th was a little long. The Planning Commission sees this on Thursday. So there's more recent, there's timeframes that are coming up closer than in April. That's all I have.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Smith.
I just want to add, I'm not willing to do a long postponement without a specific need. And I think given Mr. Swanson and Mr. Frost's comment, I think we're okay to vote on this without the amendment. I appreciate the friendly amendment from Councilman Ryder, but if it's all the same to her, I think we can move ahead with the vote without the amendment.
It's redundant. I'm not married to it.
Okay.
It was just a request from constituents.
Okay. Councilmember Ryder, are you withdrawing the proposed amendment? Okay. We're back to the original motion on the floor. Councilmember Thomas? Put your microphone on, please.
You know, one of the things that make this area really, really special is the ability that, or we've got a really vibrant city. There's a lot to do here. There's an urban environment, but you can always get out of it quickly and get into nature. So that's really a lot of what makes East Tennessee special, and that's a lot of the reasons why people live here and are coming here, and it's the reason I live here. You know, it's a really good balance of urban life and nature. And so we really need to be protective of these areas outside of the city. This is, you know, kind of a difficult thing. It is complicated. I think the intent behind the plan before us is good. You know, what I've heard and the reasons that are given it is to concentrate growth where infrastructure is, which, and then preserve the agricultural and more rural areas. There is a decrease in the density in the rural areas, and there is a cost savings, of course, to concentrating infrastructure. And so it's almost, to me, it's like the choice is either killing this plan or keeping what we got. And I think the plan as presented is better than what we have now. And I do think council here is somewhat limited in what we can do. But I'm going to vote for it with the information that at least has been presented by me from the committee and the Advanced Knoxville that formulated. And so like I said, I think it's kind of the difference for me is killing it with one of the three municipalities rejecting it or keeping the status quo. And I think the plan that is before us will be better than the status quo. So.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-2.
11B is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a quitclaim deed to transfer property located at the site of the sanitary laundry building located at 621, 625, and 627 North Broadway, part of parcel 094-DP013, located on the west side of North Broadway between Old Central Street and Tyson Street, to Knoxville's Community Development Corporation.
Move to approve.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Councilmember McKenzie and then Thomas.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to ask Mr. Bentley and/or RJ if you could give us just a high-level overview of this project, please.
Ms. Justice, if you'll begin, and then if Mr. Bentley is here, but I mean, either one of you.
Sure, thanks. This property is along the North Broadway corridor in the downtown north area. It was a building that operated as a dry cleaner from about the early 20s until the early 90s and has been vacant since. The city currently owns that property. KCDC owns an adjacent property, and there is an opportunity to partner to activate this site and bring it back to life as a multi-tenant commercial space.
Thank you.
Councilmember Thomas.
Yes, and I do have a bit of a cold tonight, and I've been trying to talk through it. But this resolution here is something I really can champion, I suppose. You know, it's if you look at it, all the things that we've been talking about and doing some of it along the corridors, taking blighted property, turning it into affordable housing, the whole catalog of things that we've been trying to do. I think this is just a really good example of that. And so I'm really happy to see it and, of course, completely support it. And so the more of this that we do, I think the more we will actually have affordable housing, the more we will clean up property on the corridors that we talk about. So accolades to those who have pushed this through, and I look forward to more of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
11D is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with Carmichael's Lawn Care LLC to provide mowing to TDOT-controlled access sites along the I-275 corridor and Asheville Highway for an annual cost not to exceed $59,460.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
11E is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with Taylor's Lawn Service LLC to provide mowing and maintenance services of the Baker Creek Preserve for an annual cost not to exceed $51,740.
Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
11F is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with Taylor's Lawn Service LLC to provide landscaping services at Sutchery Landing Park for an annual cost not to exceed $50,700.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
11G is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with Avalon Incorporated to provide ground maintenance at the Oddfellows Cemetery and Potter's Field for an annual cost not to exceed $28,617.50.
Move to approve.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Councilmember Singh? Would you please your microphone on?
Thank you. I'm very much in support of this, but I am also concerned about some other historic Black cemeteries, and I wish we would also include that in our project that we've been doing, which is Crestview, Southern Chain. They're all off of Keith Avenue, and for years, constituents have been reaching out to me, and different volunteer groups will go out, and Public Works has come out and helped out as well. But we need an ongoing way to preserve that. There's a lot of history there.
Okay, we'll note it, and I'm not sure what the the costs or ownership is and that sort of thing. So I know it's complicated. So thanks for noting that, and we'll see if we can look into that a little further. Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
12A is an ordinance appropriating the total sum of $14,079.88 from the Parks and Recreation Department's Grants and Benevolence Fund, donating same for completed projects to various qualified organizations as part of the Challenge Grant Award Program.
Move to approve.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
12B is an ordinance to close Arthur Street from the southeast side of May Avenue to the northeast side of Marion Street, subject to two conditions, and authorizing the mayor to execute quitclaim deeds to the adjacent property owners, City of Knoxville applicant, 6th District.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions? Councilmember McKenzie.
Mayor, just wanted to see if we could condense the following items in the 6 districts, which are street closures as well. That's C, D, and E.
You're making a motion to vote on all three items at the same time?
Yes.
Okay.
There's 4.
4?
Yes.
B, C, D, and E? Okay, the motion's been made to vote on all 4 items, 12B, C, D, and E at the same time. Has been made and seconded. Are there any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of voting at all 4 at once, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And is there a motion to vote on the 4 items?
Move to approve on all 4 items.
Okay, motion's been made to approve all 4 items, 12B, C, D, and E. Has been made and seconded. All those in favor, any questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
12F is an ordinance to close Barber Street between Gertrude Avenue and Suzanne Avenue, subject to one condition, and authorizing the mayor to execute quitclaim deeds to the adjacent property owners, Belvin Properties LLC, First District.
Move to approve.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
12G is an ordinance to change the street name of a portion of Topside Road located between Alcoa Highway and the new alignment of Topside Road on the west side of Alcoa Highway to Scenic River Road, Knox County Engineering and Public Works, applicant First District.
Move to approve.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
12. 12H is an ordinance approving the request of Taylor D. Forrester for an amendment to the East City Sector Plan from low-density residential to medium-density residential for property located at 2805 Delrose Drive, leaving any special purpose land use classifications unchanged. 6th District.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
12I is an ordinance approving the request of Taylor D. Forrester for a one-year plan amendment from low-density residential to medium-density residential for property located at 2805 Delrose Drive, leaving any special purpose land use classifications unchanged. 6th District.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
12J is an ordinance to change the base zoning classification of property located at 2805 Delrose Drive from RN1 District to RN4 District, leaving all special purpose and overlay districts unchanged. Taylor D. Forrester, applicant, 6th District.
Move to approve.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
12K is an ordinance to change the base zoning classification of property located at 0 Parkview Avenue from RN2 District to RN4 District. David Varner, applicant, 6th District.
Move to approve.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
12L is an ordinance to change the base zoning classification of property located at 0 Jefferson Avenue from RN4 District to IMU District. Michael Williams, applicant, 6th District.
Move to approve.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
12M is an ordinance to change the base zoning classification of property located at 5121 Colmere Avenue Road from RN1 District to AG District, leaving all special purpose and overlay districts unchanged. Angela Wilson, applicant, 5th District.
Move to approve.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Council members, there's two people who have signed up to speak at public forum. First is John Zieda. Mr. Zieda, are you present? Okay, if you could come to the podium and state your name and address for the record, and you'll have up to 5 minutes. Ms. Helsley, your light is on, I think, inadvertently.
Hi, I am John Zieda. I live in Knox County. I am here again about bylaw and how the fire department's burning businesses. This is a ludicrous accusation, but it's a fact. The first store was my father's. We didn't know that the city would send the fire department in and burn it. We knew that our store was stolen by the city in 1993, at the end of that year. In 92, we had a fire. The bylaw store is 100% provable between the fire department and the police department and the coroner. Now we've got Parkway Hotel on Chapman Highway. Then we've got Planned Parenthood Clinic, which I brought it up last time I was here. The clinic, here's bylaw. Here's the camera in the walk-in cooler. Here's the clinic. There's a device right here. There was a device right here, 12 o'clock position. There's multiple devices. And here's a picture of the devices again at the clinic. And here's a blow-up, and half of these, if not all of them, are from the news media. Nobody wants to do anything. All I know is when the alarm goes off in the store in the middle of the night in a business, we as a business owner expect the fire department to protect us and the police department, not to burn the store and let the city come and steal it and make up a bogus report, India Gorley, he burned it. We don't know if it was on purpose or by accident. That's what the police report stated. Now, it doesn't stop there. Before I came here, I almost hesitated not to come. Somehow, Regions Bank, the manager, it happened on a Friday. The employees had to know about it. The bank was burned on 707 Broadway. There's two pictures, one of a fireman, two of them, both of them are firemen, one inside and one outside by the door. They're manipulated, and one of them, I can prove it clear-heartedly. The one that's inside that store, the picture from the media. Regions Bank was burned by the fire department, and I can prove this. And I've asked for the arson pictures, and Captain Lampkin said they were ready, and they were at the law department. And the law department said, go back to the fire department. And the fire department has not answered me. Now, the latest fire is Buddy's Barbecue at Magnolia. Buddy's Barbecue, again, I don't know why the fire department's burning these businesses. The employees, I don't think, are putting money in their pocket. Apparently, it's somebody from the city of Knoxville, because I know, I've talked to one fireman, and he said when these firemen are hired on with the department, they're told to sign a document of disclosure. They cannot repeat what they see and do out to the public. Planned Parenthood, the list again, my father's store in 1992, by law, I can prove it 1,000,000%, Parkway Hotel, Planned Parenthood. When anybody takes a look at these pictures, the devices, specifically this one, is scattered out all in the rafters. Imagine they're told to light them up, the building's on fire, and the fire department goes down the street screeching with the sirens on, and it's the fire department that lit it. It's the fire department that lit it. And who's responsible for the arson investigation? The same people who lit Bilo, the same people who lit Parkway Hotel, the same one Planned Parenthood Clinic, and Regions Bank. Believe me, I can prove what I'm talking about.
Thank you, Mr. Zeta. Your time is up. Thank you.
My phone number, 865.
Thank you. Next person signed up to speak for public forum is Rick Roach. Mr. Roach, are you present? Mr. Roach is not present. Okay, without objection, this meeting is adjourned.